welcome to the Friday episode of the Dollar Bandits. I'm Orrin Phillips, and today we have, for my money, one of the nicest people in comic books and cartooning. I'm talking about John Rose. John is known throughout the country for his work on Barney Google and Snuffy Smith. You can find in newspapers all over the place. A very, very talented guy, a very, very nice guy. It's great to hear his story about how he worked with the veterans of the cartooning industry and to get to where he is. And now he has become a veteran. He's the one teaching others. He's worked on numerous other projects as well. And just announced on Facebook the other day that the Barney Google and Snuffy Smith 100th anniversary is coming out soon. Go check out John Rose's Facebook page or Comics Kingdom for more information about that and how to get that. So, without further ado, Mr. John Rose. John, thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh, thank you, Orrin. I've listened for many years and I love your podcast, so I'm very honored to be here.
Well, we appreciate that. So let's start. How did you first discover comic books?
Um, well, for me, I would say I have vivid memories of the comics, not so much comic books, but I really remember spreading the newspaper out on the floor, laying on my stomach like in my grandmother's house or our house growing up, and just reading the comics. Uh, maybe I couldn't even read them yet, but I just enjoyed the artwork. Um, and then, especially like my grandmother, we lived in a small town. We didn't live too far from my grandmother's house, and actually, her house was a great location for a cartoonist because I would read the Sunday comics, the daily comics, and then I would go up about a block from her house was a newsstand that had the comic books and the spinner racks, um, and then about a block from there was the library where I could read all the how do you draw cartoon books and things like that, and then just make a circle back to her house. But I would say that age when I just first started reading and remembered reading the comics was probably around uh, 5 or 6, something like that, the comic strips. Um, and Yeah, we would spend every Friday night or a lot of Friday nights with her. And on Friday night, you get uh, frozen pizzas or Captain Crunch bowls of cereal, watch your Friday night shows, wake up in the morning, watch the Saturday morning cartoons. Um, and then after you read the comics, you could walk up to the comic book shop and get like, the comics that you enjoy watching in the Saturday morning cartoons. And, so it's comics have always been a part of my life for as long as I can remember.
So, how is the decision made to pursue a career in the field?
Um, Truly, it's all I ever really wanted to do. My mom used to tell a story when I was just a real small little child. We were driving on a trip, and I was in the back seat, and my mom and dad were in the front. And I handed her a piece of paper, and I asked her to draw me a man. And so she couldn't draw that well, but she just drew a little stick figure and handed it back to me. And I looked at it and I said, "That's not a man." And she said, "Well, draw your own." And I've been drawing ever since. Um, but I it's there's never really been anything else I've truly wanted to do. Um, well, another example, when I was in fifth grade, um, I it was a rainy weekend. I told my parents I was going to go write a book, go up to my room and write and draw a book, and it ended up that uh, my parents were probably glad to get me out of their hair for the weekend, but I wrote this little book called Casey the Canine about a crime solving dog, and my parents must have liked it because they showed it to my fifth grade teacher, and then my fifth grade teacher showed it to the principal, and the principal and the fifth grade teacher decided that the school would publish the book.
Oh, wow.
And so this was in the days probably before your time, even mimeograph machines
Yeah.
were a big thing. So I don't know if the book read well or looked good, but it smelled great. Actually, let's see, have I have one here. Kind of the first you can tell I love Snoopy as a kid because this
Wow.
AC that looks a lot like a fifth grader's version of Snoopy. But yeah, the book, and then they had a book signing for me. Um, after a PTA meeting, and I sold enough books to pay for my way to go to Boy Scout camp that summer. So it was kind of neat, but yeah, it's and I think I always kind of had I had the support of some teachers. I had the support of my parents. Um, and I did a lot of art classes in high school. I was an art major in college. So I just really never considered trying to do anything else. And I think my parents, they say ignorance is bliss, I guess, and they didn't really know that it was tough to get into and tough field to get into. And I'm blessed and lucky to get to do it every day.
Now, was it directly comic strips you wanted to do, or comic books, or was it whatever you
Um,
can get your foot in the door for?
Probably whatever I could do. I loved Disney cartoons. I would love to probably I would enjoy being an animator until I figured out how much you had to draw to just to make a, a mouse move a finger or something. I don't know, but yeah, comic strips were always my favorite. But I did start out. Let me think. When I was in high school, I did our next door or not next door, just down the street from us was a sports editor for the local newspaper, and he asked me if I could do sports cartoons. So I said, of course, I could do them. I'd never done them before, but um, just kind of did those through high school and college. Um, and then I drew for the college. I went to James Madison University in actually here in Harrisonburg, Virginia, and I drew for the college newspaper, The Breeze. I did editorial cartoons, and so when I graduated, that was at first I started working for a newspaper staff. So I worked on staff at a newspaper doing illustrations, editorial cartoons, um, anything I could do in addition to doing like advertising work and paste up and things like that. So my first foray, into cartoons was mostly editorial cartoons, but um, being a comic strip cartoonist was really the what I really wanted to do. Um, well, actually, when I was, I guess, kind of something that really inspired me too. When I can't remember if I was a junior or senior in college. It was our school had a something called Fine Arts Week, and they brought in a cartoonist to speak. And my my art history, she was one of my art history professors. She knew that I drew cartoons and comics for the school paper, and she was on the committee that was bringing him in to speak. And so she invited me to go out to dinner with the cartoonist and the committee. I got to hang out with him before his program, go to his presentation, and then talk afterwards. And the cartoonist was Mike Peters, who draws Mother Goose and Grimm, and he's a Pulitzer Prize winning editorial cartoonist. So um, that that was really really inspirational to me, and showing me kind of that you could do both, editorial cartoons and comics. And at the time he was just launching, this was way back in the 80s, and he was just launching Mother Goose and Grimm, and he was talking about that and drawing some of the characters. And um, I guess because I grew up even at a young age reading comic strips, uh, that was, and then seeing him get to do it, it just, that really inspired me even more. So, yeah, comic strips were always my ultimate goal, and yeah, very, very bodaciously blessed to get to draw comics.
Yeah, I want to get into Snuffy Smith and King Features,
Mhm,
but just a question about as an artist doing comic strips, you
mhm,
know, once you make what the character looks like in the first, couple of strips,
mhm.
does the character sort of have to solidify, like that's the way it's going to look every strip going forward? And
I, I think the character does look similar, but over time, and I think even a lot of times, unbeknownst to the cartoonist, the character changes just a little bit in appearance. Because if you look back, well, for example, with our comic strip, of course, Billy DeBeck's Barney Google and Snuffy Smith had a certain look, and Fred Lasswell, when he took it over, he followed that look. But then over the 60 years or more that he drew the strip, Snuffy changed in style and appearance. And the same with me. I feel like, when I first started doing it, I tried to just draw as close to Fred as I could, and I feel like I do still in a lot of aspects, but in other ways, I feel that my style has kind of slipped in, and I guess everything changes just gradually over time. I don't notice it day to day, but if I look back um, to 2001 when I started drawing myself, um, yeah, I can see a difference between then and now. I don't know if an average reader can, but I can.
Now, I mean, so we'll start off now. When you took over from Fred, was the edict given to you, make it look just like his, or were you just kind of told, do as you would like to do?
Well, I had so I started. Well, I can tell you how I started with
Mhm.
Snuffy. I started as an assistant to Fred. I was Fred's inking assistant, um, and kind of the way that came about. Uh, I'm a member of the National Cartoonist Society, and I didn't know Fred, but I knew his how to get in touch with him, his contact information. So I had been to a National Cartoonist Society meeting, and I was talking with a fellow editorial cartoonist who was working as an assistant on the Blondie comic strip.
Mhm.
And I didn't really know that uh, comic strip cartoonists used assistants, and sounded like kind of a neat way to get my foot in the door to maybe get to do work on a comic strip. And so on the drive home, I was just talking to my wife about it, and the first comic strip that came to mind was Snuffy Smith. I'd grown up reading it and um, always enjoyed it, especially the art style, even when I was younger and couldn't really read or understand all the writing. But um, so when I got home, I sketched up a few sample strip. Let me think. It was a Sunday page, and then some character drawings, and then I sent that in the mail, like snail mail back in the day, um, to Fred, along with some other things that I'd done, like books and stuff.
Mhm.
Um, and Fred was like a big he was like a legend in the business. As a comic strip cartoonist, everybody knew and loved Fred. And but as a cartoonist, I know a lot of other cartoonists have said this, but you get a lot of rejection. So I fully expected either when I put that in the mail, I expected not to hear back from Fred or to get a thank you, but no thank you. Um, and the to my surprise, one about 2 weeks later, I guess it was a Saturday. I was eating a nutritious lunch of Cocoa Puffs, and um, the phone rings, and I answer the phone, and the voice on the other end says, "John, this is Fred Lasswell," and I like choke on my cereal. And he said, "I got the packet of samples that you sent me, and I really love the way you draw big noses." I mean, word for word, that's what he said, the big noses. So it ended up that I worked as his assistant.
Mhm.
He needed an inking assistant. So basically, he wrote the comic strip, he sketched it out, and then he would fax it to me. And then I would take that from his sketch and then do the finished ink drawing. Uh, and and he had a font. Actually, this was in the late '90s. He was probably one of the first cartoonists to ever use a font.
Mhm.
Um, put his font in for the letters and then send it back to him. So I guess by working with him all those years, I worked with him from '98 to 2001. So when I did get the opportunity from King Features to be the cartoonist after Fred passed away in 2001. I did try to follow the style that I kind of learned from him, and I tried to keep it as close, and I still try to keep it as close as I can to that look. But I know, over this many years, it's things change a little bit.
What's the key to being a good inker for a comic strip?
Um, it's I guess a steady hand, knowing what tools you'd like to use, a steady hand, in my case anyway. And I remember when the editor of King Features, Jay Kennedy, when he decided to hire me, which he had, actually he had contacted me when Fred passed away and asked me if I wanted to audition for it. And I said, well, actually, no, he asked me if I wanted to send some samples in. And so I did. He sent me some things and I sent some samples in. And later he told me other people had auditioned and he liked my work the best because he thought um, that I had a very friendly ink line.
Hmm.
I don't know what exactly that, but that was the actual description. He liked my friendly line. That's what he said. So that works for me. So I guess that's a secret. Have a friendly line.
Well, what is it like? I mean, you're getting in the industry and you get to work with, like you said, a legend is right there
Mhm.
working with you. Uh,
Right.
what does it hit you that, oh my gosh, yeah, I get to work with this guy every day?
Yeah. So the way we worked, I'm in Virginia, and
Mhm.
Fred was in Tampa and Florida, and then the syndicates in New York City. So when we first talked on the phone, then he flew me down, and I stayed with worked with him for several days in his studio, and then I think over the time period that I worked with him, about 3.5 years, um, I was down for long. I was down to see him three different times in person. But then every day we talked on the phone. Every day we emailed or faxed. He was an older gentleman, but he was very much into technology. Like I said, he was probably one of the first cartoonists to ever have a font, and then he was in his upper 80s at the time. Um, but he yeah, he was great to work with. Um, we talked all the time. Um, and I learned a lot from him. Like, for example, because he was so into technology, like um, he created a DVD series of how to teach kids how to draw. And again, this was in the '90s, and I he had done it. He sends it to me. It was the late '90s, and he said he calls me on the phone. He's like, John, I did this new DVD. I want you to watch it and review it and tell me what you think. And I said, okay. Well, I didn't have a DVD player at that time, but I didn't want to tell him. So I ran out and bought one so I'd have it and had it set up before it got to me in the mail. Um, but yeah, he was great to work with. I learned a lot from him as a teacher. If he didn't like, well, like if he liked what I did, he would say, he'd look at it and say, "Oh, this is fine as a frog's hair." He just talked and so he'd use funny words like that. Or like if he didn't like what I did and wanted me to correct something, he'd say, "What are you doing? Looking out the window? Quit looking out the window and get back and draw this correctly." And but yeah, he was a lot of fun. And yeah, but then also a good teacher and a hard worker. He was still working 7 days a week. And I never really knew when the faxes were going to come, but I knew when I got a fax I needed to get on it. And I still worked at the newspaper during the day, and then I would work as his inking assistant at night,
Right.
until 2001 when King asked me to be the cartoonist.
When the torch is passed to you, did you feel
Mhm.
like you were ready for the responsibility?
I don't know. I don't know if I'm ready yet. I don't know. I don't know. No, it's a tremendous honor, but it is a lot considering the rich legacy of this comic strip.
Mhm.
Um, I do feel like he prepared me well, but I always feel like I'm trying to live up to the great work he did and do my best to carry on the legacy of Fred and then Billy DeBeck before him, because they were both incredible cartoonists.
Do you think now that this is now going to be your legacy, that there's going to be a generation after you, but there's going to be kids who grew up reading what you've done, and you are going to be their Snuffy Smith artist and writer? How does that feel knowing that you're going to be the guy that they're going to be talking about?
Well, that's pretty special. That's that's an honor to think somebody's reading my work and remembering it. So I that would yeah that would make me feel really good. It's humbling. Yeah.
With something like what you with Snuffy Smith, there's an expectation amongst fans as to how the story is going to go, you know, a familiarity
Mhm.
to it. So,
Right.
you know, you can't just go avant-garde one day and just make this whole weird thing. It has to sort of follow a
Right.
certain pattern and
You
stuff
have to
like that.
stay, yeah, you have to stay true to the characters
Right.
and the themes, and some things change a little over time. Like, um, I guess one of the first things I did, I made the characters. They're all literate. They can read. They read the newspaper. They comment on things in a very, very general sense.
Mhm.
Not politically or anything. Um, but yeah, you know there's little changes like that, but you do have to. Otherwise, I mostly try to stay true to the work before me.
How far in advance do you think of a storyline? Is it per individual strip, or do you have a storyline in general that you want to break into almost chapters?
I'm about 10 weeks ahead on the dailies and about 12 on the Sundays. But sometimes, for example, in 2019, was our 100th anniversary, and I did a storyline. And with that storyline, I started. It was about a 2.5 or 3 week long storyline about the 100th birthday of Barney Google, and that I started about a year and a half ahead of time, just thinking about it and plotting it out. And um, so sometimes when things hit me, I'll write it down and work on it, even though it's going to be far ahead in the future.
I've spoken to Guy Gilchrist and a few other guys who've done dailies and
Mm-hmm.
Sundays as well. It's a
Mm-hmm.
machine. It's a machine
Yeah,
that doesn't stop.
it
Uh,
is.
and
Yeah.
talk a little bit about the grind that goes into keeping this thing going.
I mean, I love it, so it is a lot of work,
Mhm.
but I can't imagine doing anything else. I mean, you have a deadline every day,
Right.
so you really just have to stay ahead of it, and that's the hard thing, staying ahead of it when when you want to go on vacation, you get 2 weeks ahead, but when you come back, you feel like you're 4 weeks behind. But you know, it's learning how to work around and manage the deadlines. So just staying ahead is the most important thing. I've heard of other cartoonists. There's a few that are really far ahead, like a year ahead or more, and I wish I could get that far, but I can't. Um, but yeah, it is a grind, and it's you just have to love it and stay on top of it. Sometimes if something's going on, if something bad happens, you still have to turn it out, even if it's and those times you kind of look back on some of your ideas that you wrote down. Maybe you don't feel like being funny or something, but you got to look back in your notebook, your sketchbook, try to find some things, and you might have to do it at night, miss a little bit of sleep, and you know, but just power through.
How do you not hit a wall creatively?
I ask my readers. I hope I haven't. I don't know, but the important thing really is just keeping. For me, I don't know if somebody told me this. I can't remember who, but just kind of keeping a file of evergreen gags, like a sketchbook of gags that could be used any time of year. And just when you think of those, write them down and get ahead and have a bunch of those. So when there are days that you can't think of things to do, then you can fall back on that, and then hopefully you'll have days where you have more than enough
Mhm.
ideas.
This is a weird question, but this is a legacy comic strip. If
Mm-hmm.
you wanted to add a new character to it, would
Mm-hmm.
there be permissions you would need to get along the way to do this, or at this point, are you allowed to do as you think would be best for the strip?
Um, I've Over the years I've created a lot of secondary characters, really without any. I just put them in there, and I never had any criticism or anything. But about it was about 20 somewhere in 2000. So I think it was around 2020 or so.
Mhm.
I came up with the idea of Sparkplug having a grandson,
Mhm.
and that was going to be little Sparky, and he's a small pony, and actually, I thought of my daughter, since that's kind of a generational thing. My daughter, youngest daughter, is a graphic designer in Florida, and I thought, well, maybe I could talk to her about it. I talked to her a little bit about it, and so she colors Little Sparky for me. So basically, what I did check in with King Features about that. They love the idea, and so now we do. Um, 2 to 3 special weeks every year that are just a Little Sparky themed. And even more than that, Little Sparky has become popular on merchandise. We've done, um, well, I've got, let's see, t-shirts. We've done Christmas ornaments. I don't know if you can see that, but we've
Oh
done
wow.
like a little Christmas ornament with a little Sparky.
Yeah.
Um, and he's just a very popular little character for merchandise, and plus it's fun to once or like I said, a few times a year, collaborate with my daughter and have her, color the character. And um, he's been in a lot of different, uh, a lot of different types of merchandise. And coming up, actually, it's probably out right now. We're going to do a special calendar. We've done the calendar, and it's going to be a spark plug and a little Sparky calendar for 2025. And it was really honored. I mean, it was really neat to see like those characters in print like that on a calendar. I mean, I grew up always having like a Garfield calendar or a Dennis the Menace calendar, a Muppets calendar, some kind of cartoon type calendar. So to be able to do one with the characters, one a legacy character, one you created, and then work with your daughter too at the same time doing it. That was a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to that.
That's pretty awesome. And not to get too into the weeds about things, but when you do create a character like Little Sparky, is that
Mm,
character King Features character, or do you have
yeah,
any
yeah,
ownership to it?
that's
That's like
yeah, no,
comic
that's
books.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, there that yeah, that's King Features character. Yeah.
gotcha. But you'll the
Mm,
legacy would be that you created it though.
right, right. Yeah, yeah. So
Could
and I like that. It's yeah.
when you do you hear conversations like when you're doing dialogue for these characters, do you hear
Mhm,
voices, their voices, speaking, and that's what you write it down? I mean, how do you come up with the dialogue in their voices?
mhm. Yeah, kind of. It's yeah, I've heard other cartoonists say, and I didn't really think about it, but as the years have gone on, you kind of get to know the characters, and it's almost like they do speak to you. You kind of know what they would do if you put them in a certain situation. So yeah, it is true. I haven't talked back yet.
Oh, that's
Once
good.
they talk to me, but I haven't talked back yet.
Could there ever be a time where somebody else takes on the writing or somebody else takes on the art and you would just do half of it? Or do you need to do both, to make you feel like the complete thing?
I've used uh, I've a writer. Um, Over the time that I've worked on this comic strip, I've had 2 different people that have helped me. Some with writing, but yeah, I mean, I don't know what the future would hold, but I would love to keep doing it. Like I'm doing it for as long as I can. But
Why do you think the comic has lasted and has had the fan base that it has for so many years?
um, I think, I guess I don't know that I could take any credit for this, but I really feel like it's in the secret of the success is in the characters. I
Mhm,
think people like the characters, they like spending time with the characters, and most of those characters were created before me.
mhm.
But I feel like that's the secret sauce in a successful comic strip is characters that people want to see every day, whether it's online or in your morning newspaper, or just spend a few minutes with those comic characters.
I just want to talk for a moment about King Features itself because
Mhm.
they kind of get lost in the comic world, but King Features was there from the very beginning, with Popeye
Right,
and
right.
so many other Betty Boop legendary characters.
Hmm.
What's it like working for them, and what's the history of King to be part of the history of King Features?
Like I said, I've always wanted to be a comic strip cartoonist, and when I really look back at it, a lot of the comics that I loved growing up, like Beetle Bailey and High and Lois and Blondie, Popeye, a lot of those, all of those, I guess I mentioned, they were all King Features,
Mhm.
um, and and then as I even, as I grew older, the same thing, just different ones that I followed. And um, they just have such a rich history, especially with the classic characters that they have. Um, and that it really, they're wonderful to work with. And it's really an honor to get to be a tiny little part of uh, that that legacy of King Features and all the great characters that they have. Um, like they're redoing Flash Gordon right now, and that guy is an incredible. I have not met Dan, but he's an incredible artist and doing a great job with that strip, and that's a legacy character. Um, and yeah, it's an honor for me to be part of it. So since I grew up reading it, Snuffy and then other characters of theirs, it's just a tremendous honor to be part of King Features for me.
And you've also been a recipient of a number of awards because of your work on the strip. I mean, that's got to be,
I don't know about
feather in the
that.
cap as well.
No, well, yeah, that's nice. That's I guess what did I think I heard? What is it? Dick Brown said some. I think it was Dick Brown years ago said something. I never got to meet him, but I read that he said the getting to work on the comic strip is the piece of cake. You know, Wards might be just the icing or the sprinkles on top of the icing or something like that. No, that's very touching, especially when you get an honor from your peers or something like
Um,
that. Yeah, yeah, it's a big honor.
Another project is Kids Hometown Newspapers. How did that all come together and what was the goal of it?
So I that was in the 1980s when I got my first job on a newspaper staff. They had a special page each week that was dedicated to education in the community, and it was a weekly paper. So it was like, I don't know, bus routes and school lunch menus and things like that. And I just thought maybe a kids cartoon would be fun for this to give this page a little fun feature. And the editor liked the idea, so I came up with it. And after a few years of doing it, I realized it might have some syndication potential. So it was syndicated first with a very small syndicate in Virginia. Then it was with Copley News Service, then Creators Syndicate,
Mhm.
um, and we've done back in the 90s and maybe the year 2000. We did some kids activity books with the characters.
Right.
Yeah, it was early 2000. Um, and so that was inspiring. It was fun to create a character, and I would get mail from young kids, and so yeah, that's kind of how that came about. And it was a lot of fun to work on, and especially getting mail from kids. That was a lot of fun. Probably my favorite part.
If during your career Disney, DC, or Marvel got in touch with you and said, "Hey, I'd be interested in having you come aboard, do some work with us," would that have been something you would have jumped on, or did you like what you're doing so much that this is where you wanted to stay?
I think once I got especially into working on the comic strip, I would have stayed. Now before that, if Disney called me, yeah, I probably would have said, yeah, I'm there or whatever. But I don't think they're going to call me. I don't think they have my number. But yeah, that would have been tempting back then. But and I live vicariously. My youngest daughter, she used to work for Disney for about 4 or 5 years, and then her husband works for Disney,
Mhm.
the Walt Disney the parks down in Orlando area, and so I live vicariously through them and um, seeing how they get treated and how what they get to do with Disney. So
When it's all said and done, and I know you have a lot more time left on the strip, but what do you want your legacy to be with these characters?
really, I don't know. Maybe just that people felt like they got us a little smile each day. I don't know, from my work on the strip, maybe a chuckle here and there,
Mhm.
um, and that it's still there. The way things are changing, if the comic's still there. Like I remember, I read a couple of years ago when High Eisman retired from doing Popeye for many years. He said he was glad to see that the comic was being continued. Um, uh, so I feel like, if it continues beyond me, then I did my job. And if not, it's been a bodacious ride. But no,
It,
I don't know. I just hope that I brought a smile to some folks every day.
I think most definitely. If you could cherry pick a character from any comic strip, comic book, anything like that, to have had a run
Mhm.
on or to have worked on, who would it have been?
Hmm. Well, probably like when I was younger, I probably would have loved like working on like Mickey Mouse or something, years, many, many years ago. But honestly, I don't know. I would, or Scrooge McDuck. I probably would have liked that. I love Scrooge. To have been in the shadow of, or to get to meet Carl Barks, or I read those comics growing up, so that would have been neat to just be able to work with that character in any way. But honestly, I love working on Snuffy, so I love it. I'm thankful. Yeah, yeah, I love that one.
Is
As
it true
long as
that
he,
I say if they say, if you do the job you love, you never work a day in your life. Is that true?
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, like I was talking with my wife not long ago, and she's like, "Do you think you'd ever retire?" And I said, "I don't know that I really would. I like to fish, other than I don't like to golf. I don't know. There's a lot of things I'm like, I really love drawing. So as long as this hand will let me, I'll, as long as this hand and King Features lets me, I'll keep doing it as long as I can."
Just a really nerdy technical question, but do you use
Mhm.
computers to draw now? Or are you still freehand on paper?
I do. So I draw freehand. I do basically I sketch everything out in pencil. I do work on all 6 dailies at one time, and then I work on the Sunday page at once. But I sketch it out in pencil, then I ink it by hand. I scan it in the computer, and I clean it up on in the computer, and I add a font for the type, and like Fred did. So I do use the computer for the font. Um, and the same thing's true with the Sunday page, except I do color the Sundays. I don't color the dailies. King Features colors the dailies, but I do color the Sunday.
Do you enjoy coloring your own work or
Yeah, at first I didn't know if I'd do a good job at it, but over time I do enjoy it. Yeah.
besides Snuffy, are there any other projects that you're working on right now?
Um, I get to do a lot of merchandise. So with along with Snuffy, I get to do some merchandise. So I did just finish up that calendar that I mentioned, the little Sparky Spark Plug calendar. Just finished that up and got that to King. So that was a lot of fun to work on. About the only other thing that I do a comic strip for my college alumni magazine. It comes out about 3 or 4 times a year. So I do using the mascot. The Duke dog is the mascot. So I do that. And it's fun to um, because I guess since I did cartoons for my school newspaper, it's fun to get to do them for the alumni magazine with the mascot, because my wife and I go to a lot of uh, James Madison University football games, basketball games, the theater, all this kind of things. We live pretty close to the campus, and so we do that with our daughter that lives here in Harrisonburg, her husband and her grand. Yeah, so it's fun to get to draw that for the alumni. Every once in a while, somebody will tell me, hey, I saw your cartoon, a fellow classmate or something. So that's kind of.
I would say for your kids, when did it
Mhm.
hit them that dad draws a cartoon that's seen throughout the country and that you're a pretty well-known guy?
I don't know. I don't know about that, but my office is from the time trying to say 2001. My youngest daughter would have just been like 6,
Mhm.
5 or 6, and about that time, when I started working on the comic full time, and then even before that, my studio is actually uh, in a corner. Like our family room is L shaped, and my studio is in part of the L. and then the TV and everything is right there in the family room. So there's no door or anything. So I would always be kind of in the background when my daughters are watching Nickelodeon or Disney Channel. So I'm always just kind of been there, and I'm enjoying listening to it just as much as they are. They are watching, but so I think I don't know. They probably just think of Dad as a guy that sits in the basement and draws cartoons with them. While they watch cartoons, he's just drawing them.
Well, you've done a pretty good job with it, I think.
Oh well, thank you. Yeah, I love it. It's fun.
How can fans find out what you're up to, reach out to you?
I am on well my website. I'm at comicskingdom.com. That's the King Features website for all the King Features comics.
Mhm.
And then I'm on Facebook, John Rose on Facebook, and then I'm on Instagram at Snuffy Smith Guy. Um, so you can find out things like that from me. King Features occasionally puts up things on Comics Kingdom about what you have out. Um, and there's also for any of the Snuffy Smith and like Spark Plug, any of those kind of merchandise, it's let's see, that website is shop.comicskingdom.com.
Okay,
But to reach out to me or see my work every day, Facebook and Instagram. Yeah,
that's
probably
all.
the best places to find me.
And we are back. I told you. What a wonderful guy. Such a joy to talk to. Of course, love to have him back. But you know, it's hard work doing these cartoons for these strips for newspapers. And John's put the time in it. He's sort of taken this character that's 100 years old now, and he's sort of put his own imprint on it since 2001. And what an imprint that is, and certainly his legacy with this character is huge. So, John, thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for listening. I have a whole bunch of shows for you next week. You're really going to enjoy. So enjoy your weekend, and we will see you then.